rendering of Chinese elements that you didn't see even
That's
10
so
years
true.
ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
5 or 6 years ago even, basically there were two categories. There was one category of very Chinese, like Guo Pei everybody, very. And there's a category of totally Western fashion inspired. And now, these 2 years, I think, these 2 years, you start to see the very authentic merging of the two. The Chinese element is not because I want to be Chinese, you know, like politically correct reason. It's just they naturally think those elements are cool. They love them. And they introduce them in their very contemporary, sort of international based, or you say Western based, whatever, that fashion language. So the fashion language is Western, but the cultural, the spirit is authentically Chinese, and the Chinese from a Chinese that's not totally just Chinese, but a Chinese who can see everywhere else as well.
I agree, and I think you put your finger on it when you said confident. There was there was an ease and a quiet confidence to all of the designers I spoke to, and that was what was really inspiring. There's one of the guys who was talking about gender fluidity in one of his collections. So interesting.
The first collection, you know, just graduated.
Really, and you know, it's, and I think that's what's interesting at the moment. It are those issues, and you're seeing, and they were talking about using different types of models in the runway, shapes, different genders, third genders, and I think that was what was interesting, is that there was they were engaging with contemporary issues, but as you say, it was through a really easy, confident sort of lens. They were really inspiring. Yeah.
I think maybe just think about that idea of curating something small. I don't know, it could be something with the magazine, but with a tiny exhibition, not quite a big exhibition, but presentation through a certain thread. It doesn't need to be huge, but that, however small it is, I think is going to be very impactful.
No, it's absolutely.
To say that this is the beginning of modern Chinese fashion.
But the variety was what was interesting too. Didn't you feel like every 12, 14 designers?
I think there's 12 there, 12. Right, today? 11, yeah.
They all had such a unique perspective.
Yeah.
And that was what's interesting, is that there was an originality and an individuality to all of them, and a unique voice. And that was what was confident, was that they were able to project and talk articulately about their work. And each of them was so different from the next. And that was really interesting.
Yeah, and they selected them well, right, from their big collection. And I'm sure you agree, when you spoke to them, talked to them, you feel that it is him or it is
Absolutely.
her. It's not trying to copy someone. You know, you can have the feeling that is actually what he's trying to do, apart from maybe a couple of them, because they're really new, really young. Still experimenting, but it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, this is something to think about. Maybe that is not ready for exhibition yet. Maybe it's something we can do in the magazine.
In the magazine, exactly.
And by way of video.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, video is a curating job, right? If let's say you know, we showcase something that is really Chinese, but contemporary Chinese fashion. How we do it, that might be interesting and different from when you do your day job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's this one. We don't do exhibition because it would be too easy for you and maybe not up to your level. But if we to treat it as a magazine video, whatever, this project, maybe you look at it slightly differently, even though you do your video.
No, oh my gosh, I would love to. I would love to.
Yeah, it's to find the time.
Yeah.
Maybe that will combine with your visit with Wendy. You
yes, absolutely.
Once a year, right?
Yeah, absolutely, once a year. And I think that's it's a nice way, because part of I mean, what's so nice about Wendy's very generous endowment of my position is that it's allowing the Met to have a much wider audience, and not only to share the work we do they met in China, but also to learn about, because I said, you know, to my shame, you know, I only knew one of the designers downstairs, Xiao Li, and the others I didn't know. So it was really
Well,
inspiring.
of course, when Anna and you guys came, you were just busy fundraising. I was like, how about these designers? I mean, that's Anna, goal-oriented. I need to do that. Now Chinese project finished. Okay, I'm off. Of course, all this is not going ongoing, but but it is. But I have to say, back then, they were not ready, the designers. I think this couple of years,
what changed, do you think, Angelica?
changed.
What do you think changed?
Well, like everything about the world is that, you know, Chinese started to go out. At first, we made the economy, you know, everything, the open door policy from the Cultural Revolution. We opened our doors. I was the first generation. We benefited from education, everything. We went overseas, then we came back. And then I think this generation is, if I was slightly older or married, not had children earlier or whatever, my child probably would be, well, not quite that level, but some similar. So when they come back, they just don't have that cultural insecurity anymore.
Absolutely, that's so
I
interesting.
mean, my generation of designers, either like, I am Chinese designer, like a patch on the shoulder, you know, like Crusader, or they don't, you know.
So
I mean,
interesting.
you take, usually when someone can really criticize yourself, that someone has become a stronger person. Usually, a weaker person, you tend to, when you are attacked, you defend yourself. No. But when you actually can absorb it and think about and express it again, that's why in Tai Chi, in Chinese culture, I think Tai Chi is a very high level of achievement, the real Tai Chi. Because the Tai Chi thing is like all these Asian Chinese Buddhist thoughts, is that you absorb first, right? And then you push it out softly. This is all related, but that takes a lot of, you think about on the battlefield, if you confront your enemy, and to fight back is the natural reaction, but to take in and then find a way to go out is an art form. And that's why these kids, I think they went everywhere. They saw exhibition, they were educated, they come back, they look at Chinese culture not as something that's a task for them to do, and not something as old-fashioned, and not something as something just to put their mark on in the fashion of the world, to say I'm a Chinese designer. I think they just can't naturally do it.
So I agree.
It took 20 years.
You put the finger on the, whatever that phrase is, in terms of the fact that there was no cultural insecurity, and I think that was exactly what it is made the confidence that you're talking about. Is that,
yes.
Because I think even the response to China Through the Looking Glass, I think slightly spoke of cultural insecurity, and I think that the new generation, one of the designers I talked about saw the exhibition and was inspired by it, and I think it is that. I think there's the new confidence, a new cultural confidence that they're and
I'm sure it played a part in all the growth of all these designers, that exhibition. You know, I'm sure. You know, a lot of these pieces can be so beautiful. I'm sure if I were a young designer, a lot of them were looking at these, right, from different designers, not all from Chinese, right? I'm sure some of them would look at these to say, they could be so beautiful, so admired. You know, maybe I should try something.
But it's interesting that, you know, when you spoke to many of them in terms of, you know, which designer has inspired you the most, the most consistent was John Galliano.
I know.
Isn't that amazing? So he, across the board, he was probably the one that many of the designers spoke about, that John Galliano was the one that they felt was, which is amazing. So it wasn't, you know, it's not Virgil, it's not Detmar from Balenciaga, it's John, and who is one of our national treasures in terms of fashion.
What do you think he's doing at Margiela?
I think it's really wonderful, because I think that he. What's great, I think that, you know, increasingly, season after season, he gets stronger and stronger, because I think, obviously, to begin with, he had to be very respectful of the vocabulary of Margiela, and I think more he's getting more confident in asserting his own sort of vocabulary, but still marrying it. It's like Carl, what Carl did with Chanel. You know, the genius of Carl at Chanel was to look at the codes of Chanel, but present them in a new way. And I think that's what John is doing. You know, he's presenting the codes of Margiela in his way, and his voice gets stronger and stronger every season. The last one, we actually since his very first artisanal collection, we've acquired a piece from every collection he's done so far.
My God, his work obviously for the museum.
It's just extraordinary, and I think that, you know, there's a sort of a new authenticity and honesty to John's work when he went to Margiela. I felt like he was like the work he used to do in the late 80s, you know, when he first began working, the Incroyable collection, the Fallen Angels collection, and I felt there was he'd gone back to his roots a little bit. So
would you do a
oh my God,
I
would die to do a John show, to do an exhibition on John.
But that would require Dior to collaborate. No?
Yeah, Dior would have to collaborate because it would be his work, you know, obviously
his
own work, and also Dior and Margiela. I think there's very few designers living today who can sustain and warrant a retrospective in an art museum, and John is number one. You know, he's one of the designers who really he can sustain and he warrants his a retrospective.
I think he should relaunch his brand in China. He'll have a lot of fans and following.
Oh, his brand in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying.
Does Margiela do what? Does it?
No, John.
Oh, John.
I think so. Yeah, when we post things on social media, usually, right?
I think he was popular at a time that a lot of his generation started knowing about fashion, you know, the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
When we did those collections, those kids who admired his work now have become like the voice of fashion now as consumers as well. So
it's so heartwarming, isn't it? I was so moved when, you know, they were, you know, consistently John.
Oh yeah,
John.
Because we can tell from our social media, even when we post Ralph Simon, when we post Margot Asia, I think there always comments like the best still John Galliano.
Oh really?
You know, nobody's as good. These are all rubbish. You know,
Yeah.
this John was the real Dior. You know, those sort of things.
Yeah.
You see that still. It's interesting.
But when you went through the Dior show in Paris, you know, John just stands out. You know, I think, you know, there was
that was the golden era of fashion almost.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
It represented the big brands, big shows, big designers era.
Yeah.
And now there's nobody big, no big design, no big editor, no big everything. You know, everything is
so much,
become so
it?
democratic in some way. So it's good that the world has become more democratic, embrace it, but then you have to live with the downside of that is that there's no big anything now. We're all part of the landscape.
I miss those great shows John used to do at Dior. You know, the train coming into the station, and Mark at Vuitton. You know, Mark also staged those incredible theatrical spectacles. You know, and they were, you know, extravaganzas, and because part of fashion is about spectacle. You know, and one shouldn't be ashamed of that. One shouldn't be ashamed of, like, I mean, people always, curators in the museum, you know, look down on, you know, Harold Coder, my previous boss, always said that the Costume Institute was like the pretty sister who got all the dates but none of the respect. And, you know, he's sort of right. You know, it's almost as like curators think exhibitions shouldn't entertain. They should entertain. They should be provocative, confrontational, but they should entertain as well. You should come away from an exhibition and feel as if you've been entertained. What's wrong with an exhibition entertaining you?
Exactly, because anyway, I guess what Gucci is doing now with Alessandro is a spectacle in a different way.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just he's doing it in the way that probably suits contemporary culture.
Absolutely.
So it's still a spectacle.
It is, yeah. It's a different,
people always
different form.
want it, you know, people want to see. So
it's very true.
So think about that little mini curation job with Vogue China.
I would love to.
And we'll continue with the dialogue. We'll do this dialogue again. No?
Okay, absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
I wonder next year, when you come and see the designers who would be.
I can't wait. Yeah.
It would be interesting. But at least you would probably, after this, you'll pay a little bit more attention
Absolutely.
to what's happening to
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I think we've done too much. Right? And you must edit out a lot. But they will, because we were talking rubbish.